Hello and welcome to day one. What am I on about? Welcome to day one of AI XR for Humanity Summit at GatherVerse. And it's great to see all the amazing panelists here today. So today in this roundtable discussion, we're going to be talking about the human cost of immersion, trust, consent, and cognitive load. Very important discussion. And I have some fantastic guests with me down below, as you can see. Hello, everyone. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a 30-second introduction from each of the panelists, and then we'll get straight into the conversation. So we start with you, Eli. Welcome, and great to see you again. And please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're loud and clear.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Ellie Boahen. I am a cyborg anthropologist and technology ethicist that has very much been pushing the conversation when it comes to both consent under modern tech and techno-literacy across ages. Happy to be here.
Great to have you with us again, Ellie. Dr. Bradshaw, great to see you again. Please introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Kiana Bradshaw, and I am an academic program director of Immersion technology. All the AI programs come through to me at Columbia Southern University, and I help design and get everyone comfortable with AI. Welcome.
Fantastic, and thank you for joining us, Dr. Bradshaw. Camilla, great to see you again as well. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Camille Sanders, CEO of Greater Than Equal. I am a strategy advisor. I work at the intersection of technology and humanity. I co-host AI for Creatives, Digital Assets, and Metaverse podcast. I'm always on stages talking about the intersection of technology and humanity. And I've definitely hosted immersive events called Into the Metaverse, Fashioning Our World Together, where hundreds of people can experience being in immersive worlds. I'm very passionate about educating people and getting the conversation started about these different technologies. And confession, my background is in corporate marketing. So I've been on the other side where, I'm like, okay, let's get the data. So data collection, eye tracking to improve products and usage, gamification, all of that. And I also have teenagers. So I've seen the effects of immersive technology, like from firsthand experience. So excited about this conversation.
Great to have you with us, Camilla, and thank you for joining us once again as well. And last but not least, Malvika, it's great to see you again. Please introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are.
Good to see you too. Hi, everyone. I'm Malvika Jetmalani, based in Chicago. I'm the founder of Atvis Group, which is a human capital advisory firm driven by the core belief that to win in the marketplace, businesses must first win in the workplace. And I'm the founder of Women Shaping AI, which is a community that exists to help women from all walks of life navigate this new age of AI we find ourselves in. Good to be here with you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, panelists, for introducing yourselves. And I'll quickly introduce myself as well. My name's Russell. I am the moderator for this roundtable discussion. I'm also the Global Affairs Director at GatherVerse, and I'm also co-founder of Just Verify. And Just Verify is basically focused on building the trust infrastructure for AI. So our mission in a nutshell is to build the infrastructure for both individuals and organizations and allow them the capabilities to have a more transparent, accountable, and verifiable future, and being able to independently verify these systems and also be able to confidently know what you want to trust and what you don't want to trust in a nutshell. So it's all about what I like to say, verify, then trust. So that is it from me. And now let's get straight into the questions. So question one is, what does genuine consent look like inside an immersive experience, and are we anywhere near it? So Camilla, I know you like to kickstart things off, so would you like to kick us off for this discussion as well?
Sure. So I don't think we're anywhere near genuine consent, because if you think about consent, it's a long list of terms and conditions, and you just sign it, nobody reads it. You say, okay, because you just want to get into the experience, right? So to me, that's not genuine consent. Genuine consent is where I actually know what I'm getting into and what the consequences are and what's actually happening, what data is being collected, what's going to happen afterwards, right? And so it may look something more like, and Apple's, kind of doing this a little bit, where you have a pop-up before the experience happens. And okay, we are tracking this data. We are tracking where your eyes are going. We're doing, these types of things. But I also like to bring up when you're talking about genuine consent, have we studied enough the psychological impacts of, the immersive experience? And are you consenting to that, the stuff that's happening in your subconscious, right? So that's a whole nother question, right?
No, that's true. That is true. It's like question after question, right? But we'll obviously get into the discussions around cognitive load and emotional attachments and etc. But it is a very interesting question that you bring up there. Malvika, we'll head over to you next. Camilla was just saying about terms and conditions and not reading them. I mean, who actually does read them? Let's be honest. So Malvika, what are your thoughts on when it comes to genuine consent? Should we, especially in like an immersive experience, should we keep the disclaimer shorter? Should we even have a disclaimer? Should we do a pop-up? Like, how should we do it, really, Malvika?
Yeah, so in my view, true consent needs to be ongoing and it needs to be contextual. It can't be a one-time check the box, like both you and Camilla said, which people never read and check the box anyway. And I think users need to be informed continuously, not only about what data is being collected, but how the experience might affect them. Obviously, you need clear, procedures for obtaining consent upfront, but also that includes things like the technology is new and we don't know its impacts yet. Some ethics experts argue that we need guidelines that explicitly warn users that XR can have, quote, lasting behavioral influence, and that some of the risks might be unknown. This is new to us. I think we need to look back at the age of social media and learn our lessons from that time. That was a new technology. We didn't fully know what data was being collected. We didn't fully know what the impact would be on our brain development, on our experiences. And now, but now we know. And so now that we know better, we need to apply those learnings going forward to other technology. And so in XR, I don't think consent is a single click. I think it has to be a conversation throughout the experience.
Completely agree with you. That comes down to transparency, that comes down to accountability, that comes down to on a continuous, dialogue, so to speak, between the user and also the platform or the XR space, so to speak. But I want to bring up a very sort of interesting statistic, Malvika, where they did a study on the Digital Trust Index, and 93% of IT leaders, right, are aggressively deploying AI, right, in this study. But only 23% of consumers trust companies to use AI responsibly with their data. So what you bring up there is very important, and I like to call this what they call a trust paradox. Basically, the companies are on one side, push AI, let's do AI, etc. The other side, the consumers are like, I don't trust you in my data. Why would I use you? Like a lot of distrust happening. And then from that, this paradox is happening, and the gap is sort of widening between the organization and the user side. So, Dr. Bradshaw, I could see you nodding your head, and I would love to hear sort of your thoughts on either A, what you think of the study, or B, even what Malvika was saying, where maybe that gap can be closed through transparent dialogue.
I agree with everything that Malvika was saying, as well as Camilla, because when you're using something, and Apple lets you know a little bit, hey, we track this, we track that, but they're not letting you know throughout the whole entire space. And that's what's dangerous, because you can pretty much figure, okay, they're tracking this, what else are they doing? So I think they needed more transparency, more, notifications, and letting people know everything they track. I mean, not just instance or just some. It needs to be throughout, because I've been using these kind of environments since 2007, and I was saying to my colleagues, it's going to explode to beyond of what, everybody laughed at me. But now we're here. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it, about all of not notifying people enough and taking that data and doing something you're not supposed to be doing with?
Absolutely. And maybe even potentially other technologies could play a role within this, like, for example, blockchain. right?
Yeah.
Maybe that could be a way which they can have a transparent, immutable way to show that, like, hey, this is what we did. This is what happened. It's on the blockchain. It's immutable. It's not, can't be tampered with, etc. So maybe that could be an additional way where we can close this gap between both sides and say, this is a genuine way that we can build that relationship together, and this is a genuine way where we can have consent in this new immersive world. So let's go on to the next question, and we'll head this question over to you, Eli. What are we asking the human mind to carry in an immersive environment? This is all about the mind and kind of what Camilla was saying earlier, and that's why I said we was going to get to that sort of side of things. So, Eli, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely the mind is, if you're somebody who is more privacy centric, your mind is subconsciously carrying that lack of consent while you're going in, and you're not allowed the option of whether or not to carry that tracking information, which I do want to respond to a little bit.
Okay.
Within the sort of what we are carrying, what we're not carrying, that mental load and consent, I mean, even when we're building the models, you mentioned within that study of the gap between the users and the people developing it. I think approximately a month ago, I went to an event. I'm based in New York City, and I went to an event at the NASDAQ that was the non-human AI event that was happening. And all of the cybersecurity people are pretty much closer to the users of this technology, bringing up so many security issues that come up when you inject AI into systems in general. So you even have internally within these organizations, there are people who are trying to fight for better security, period. When you come back to the person within an immersive experience, like with an XR, be it with a VR headset or something in between, they have to carry both whatever is being tracked on them and the questioning of their reality and non-reality. Is that a car on the street or is that a product placement, right? Is my conversation with this person that I'm having in VR, is this a real person that I'm having a connection with, or is this an AI model built by the immersive experience in order to keep me here for longer? This is something we're seeing even within some customer service interactions where there is an impersonation of a real human for the phone call, but it is actually an AI model. And that's not explicitly being told to customers. So it all comes back into how educated you are on these technologies and whether or not it's going to sit in the back of your mind, or you're going to feel a little bit gaslit because something doesn't feel quite right.
You bring up so many interesting points there, especially around, when you go into immersive experience and you don't know if it's human or AI, right? This is like when we talk about gaming, we talk about NPCs, we talk about fully autonomous agent systems within there that can act as if it's like a real person, but it's not. And this is why I personally think that we should have verifiable IDs for every single agent, so then we know who is this agent is. If it doesn't have a verifiable ID to it, then as far as I'm concerned, it should be removed and not even allowed in. But that's kind of like what I think from when it comes to the verification and trust side of things. But I definitely see your point, Eli, and I think there's going to be such a big distinguish between what is real and what isn't, which is discussed in the last roundtable. So I think there's just the problems adding up, and when you get into these immersive experiences, it's like, okay, what's this going to do to my mind? Like, I'm going to go crazy. I don't know what's real. I don't know what isn't. I don't even know, like, am I even talking to you right now, Eli? Like, are you like the digital avatar companion of Eli? Where you've gone onto a platform like Hey You, for example, who recently, released their product. I don't know if you've checked that out. You definitely should. But like the advancements of the realism of video, pictures, etc., you just can't tell the difference. So I completely agree with you, and that's just going to mess so many people's minds up. So let's head back over to you, Camilla, which is how does constant simulation affect how we think and feel? I mean, I think this is a great follow-up question to what we just discussed.
Yeah, it's I think people don't realize now, people that have been in immersive environments, they do realize this, that the mind, it tricks the mind into thinking that it's real, right? And so that's why we are carrying the same emotions as we do in real life into these environments, because it actually feels real and you do feel immersed in that. And so you're in a completely different world than what's happening in real life. So once you get out of real life, which I'm thinking in my head, I'm thinking about my teenagers, right? I'm thinking about my teenage son, right? Is that, you don't know how to adapt to this world, this other real life world where you start to get irritable, like you have heightened emotions. And then if you think about kids nowadays, they are looking for that constant stimulation. So if they're not on the game, they're going to go to another device. They're going to get on TikTok and scroll. There's like constantly stimulated. And I believe that you need time for your mind to have peace, right? You need time away from these things to just think and to also be, because then if you're constantly stimulated by things, you are being controlled by the things that you are being stimulated by. And that's where the issue comes in, right? It's not having those time breaks and not being able to regulate it. Like for me, I can regulate it a little bit better because my generation, like we had both, right? But nowadays, it's a concern, with people and kids that are growing up with devices and screens and all these things that are just controlling. Like Eli said, you don't even know if you're talking to a real person or not,
It's just it's crazy, especially like you said, for the youth, and don't even know a time even before mobile phones kind of thing, or it's crazy for them. So you do bring up so many interesting points, Camilla. And Malvika, let's have it over to you. When we talk about the human mind, when we talk about our emotions, connections, feelings, etc., when we're going into this new world, how does the constant stimulation affect all that, Malvika?
Yeah, so constant stimulation can, I think, profoundly reshape our attention and emotion. Camilla talked about the emotion part of it. I think immersive tech is designed to be engaging, but our brains have evolved for far less bombardment, right? Because with this immersive technology, we're constantly bombarded with visual stimuli, spatialized sound, even haptic feedback. And we know now, researchers have warned that multitasking media can, quote, encourage and facilitate multitasking and rapid task switching, which of course reduces our ability to sustain focus on a single task. And so in other words, when people are endlessly stimulated, their attentional resources get fragmented. And in our attention economy, attention is a highly valuable resource. It is the resource that we need to constantly learn in this new environment. And we now know that learning how to learn is going to be a very, very important skill in the future. And physiologically, we know that studies link heavy screen usage to changes in the brain. There was one review that found that extensive screen time correlates with neural changes. So things like a thinner cortex and atrophy in regions in your brain that are related to processing and attention. And that study was done on adolescents between the ages of 3 to 5. And it was, of course, done with 2D devices. But I think the principle still holds. If a virtual world is constantly vying for your attention with motion and color and updates and rewards, you risk that sort of same overload. And so these 24/7 immersive feeds prime our brain's reward circuits like a digital dopamine loop. But they train us to crave constant novelty. And over time, this sort of rewires what we notice and how we feel. And so that can even result in things like anxiety and decision fatigue. And you can see how that can have a ripple effect on all aspects of your work and life.
That is so true. You bring up so many great points there, Malvika, and like you said, it can just affect your life completely, from, like I said, work to personal relationships to friendships to everything that you do in every day. And I was just thinking as well, like when you see these AI companion apps that are out, right? They have gone up so much. Like since 2022 to today, they've gone up by 700%, right? Because of the addiction of them, what you're saying, Malvika. So because they want that all the time and that stimulation, they love these AI companion apps because they keep going back and back and back and back. And if we have, was it 66 billion neurons, I think, in our head? I can't remember something like that, 68 billion. But the fact that we have over 60 billion neurons in our head, and all those neurons are getting stimulated, and like you said, it changes our mind. It's like, how is this going to affect the youth and the future, and even ourselves as we go into the AI age? So I completely agree with what you're saying. So let's head over to you, Dr. Bradshaw, and then we'll go to you next, Eli, on this question, which is, does deeper immersion reduce a person's ability to critically think or voluntarily disengage? We were just discussing about that. So Dr. Bradshaw, I would love to hear from your point of view and everything that you've done within your academia and your experience of your thoughts on this.
It really does. It really does. I've had classes where I teach and we go into the immersive world. We have an immersive environment, take students in there, but the time is limited because I notice if they're in there up to 2 hours, something's going on. And students start acting, they get a little distracted, then they do other things. So he said, no, you're going to be in here for a total of 35 to 40 minutes. You're not going to be in here for an hour. I have to limit that way because I notice students start doing other things. And then they start, oh, I don't know, I just want to look around here. They don't want to work on that project anymore. They want to do other things. So yes, it has to be limited. Same in my house. My kids are 10, 13, and 14. They know game time, immersive time is limited to half an hour. And I make sure I put it on there. So I cannot.
Sorry, mom says no.
Yes, because my brother, they look at their uncle and he's on a game for 8 hours. That's a full-time job. I can't do that. And I'm not going to allow them to do that. So yes, it really will critically. They're not thinking critically, because when I tried an even longer time, I noticed the patterns of what they would do. They do other things. They get distracted. They're like, well, let's explore something else. They don't think like they usually do. So yes, there has to be limits on the amount of time that you let anyone user to be within that virtual environment. You got to limit it because of what would happen to their brain patterns. They don't act the same. They just don't.
I have a follow-on question for you, Dr. Bradshaw.
Yes.
Do you think this is the reason why also we have so much ADHD, or what's the other ones? I don't know, and all that sort of stuff. Is that the reason why you think we have so much of that?
I think so, because I saw my brother, his past girlfriend used to just give her son a game control, and he was like 2 years old. And every time he used to sit up there for hours, I said, get him off that game. So yes, I think that's why he developed ADD, because all he would, I know how to keep him quiet. Put that in his hand. That's not what you need to do. You don't need to do anything like that. So I think it could stem to deeper psychological problems or something. It can.
I agree with you, Dr. Bradshaw, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. It was just something that I thought of, just right there and now. I'm thinking, ADHD, ADD, etc. I'm just thinking, this is why so many people being diagnosed, and it's going up. I mean, you see on the stats, it's going up too. So, but anyway, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Dr. Bradshaw. Eli, same question to you. Does deeper immersion reduce a person's ability to critically think or voluntarily engage from your point of view, Eli?
So I'm actually of a differing opinion. I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree on both fronts. So working backwards from the ADHD, as a person who grew up with not that much screen, I actually do have ADHD myself. I rarely speak about it. I grew up doing origami and drawing and making purses out of paper with staples, which were not fun, but that's what I did. But I still have ADHD. It allows for me, in the ways that I've navigated it, to think critically and think in so many different dimensions, and thus I can bring together disciplines within cyborg anthropology. I think that the higher number mostly comes from better diagnoses. As a friend of mine, Rebecca Braverman, is researching within the mind, and she is amazing. Within the deeper immersion, and that's a bit of the researcher mind in me, length of time, 100%. We should be limiting that. The depth of the immersion is where the conversation happens, because if somebody is in a hyper realistic avalanche simulation in VR, like wind in their ear, they can feel the vibration all across their body, and they're in it for 5 minutes. That's entirely different than something with significantly less graphics for double the time or even longer. So when we're talking about the depth of the immersion, I'm thinking of graphical interfaces, I'm thinking of the sound design, I'm thinking of how real are we getting this thing that's happening to this person. I think that the depth of it needs to be regulated, like check-ins of, hey, maybe you should step out. But I don't think it reduces critical thinking. I think it can actually help, because if you create a really in-depth simulation of somebody talks to a therapist and they create a VR simulation of a social interaction that they're super nervous about, right? They get guided through that just a little bit for 5 minutes, sitting through, okay, this feels real. Let's talk about the feelings that came up in that simulation, right? You can think critically, you can review through a safer distance of that experience. So I think critical thinking, especially in games, which I also experienced and loved growing up, games and simulations can bring about critical thinking. It's the length of time and reminders that this is a simulation and this is an immersion and not reality.
Honestly, it makes me think of my time when I went into, I was at a conference and I wore like this headset and they had like this thing that you could stand on and you could walk around and run on it in the game. And, you know, I was going around shooting zombies or whatever at the time. After 5 minutes, I had enough, honestly, because as soon as I got that headset off, I was dizzy. I felt sick. There was a bunch of, and I was like, I don't want to do that ever again. Not if it's going to be like that. I'm like, no, I'm okay, thanks.
Exactly. Like 5 minutes of that really in-depth simulation, you were like, I'm done. But there's so many zombie shooter games that exist out there and people can play them for hours, right? So that depth is really, really key.
No, I completely agree with you. You know, it's different when you're wearing a VR headset versus, you know, just playing it on your screen. 100% agree with that. And I do agree with you, Dr. Bradshaw. I think, you know, limitations have to be put in place, time limits, etc. And maybe, you know, other things that should be in place too to stop, you know, people just playing it all day. So I guess my next question is, what responsibility do creators and businesses have for the lives of users? I mean, we spoke about, you know, also, you know, 93% of IT people are, you know, more immersed and pushing generative AI versus 23% of consumers who actually trust it, so to speak. So let's dive into this a bit more with yourself, Camilla. What are your thoughts on what responsibility do creators and businesses have for the lives of users?
Yeah, and first I kind of want to build on something that Eli mentioned about the immersive environment. So I know we tend to think of it negatively, but there's also applications such as in the social impact space. We know that to build empathy for people that are going through, say, for example, an environmental impact, such as a flood, the way to build empathy is for that other person to actually experience it. And when we have these immersive technologies, you can actually experience it. And they've done this with like classrooms and with kids and you know, other people. Like you get these political officials to actually experience what has happened, and suddenly you have this empathy and you want to do something about what has happened. So it does change the way you think, but sometimes it can be for good, right? There's applications that can happen for good. So going back to what responsibility businesses have, well, that's the question. What is the good that you are doing with these? And if you can manipulate people to stay in these games longer and longer, then you should have a responsibility for what happens after the fact. You should have a responsibility to make sure that some of these experiences are positive. And I think it goes back to what you said in the beginning, Russell, about transparency and accountability. You have the responsibility to be transparent and say, hey, this is an AI avatar, or you're talking to an AI agent right now, or you are, or even the ongoing consent that we talked about earlier. Like, you have that responsibility so that people understand actually what they're getting into and what they're doing. And you also have a responsibility for safety for people. So when I go into an environment, I want to feel psychologically safe. I want to make sure that my kids are, that I have different parameters that I can exit a situation or I can block a situation. So giving users more control over that. Yeah, so I think it is a responsibility of the businesses that are creating this, because a lot of times the people that are using it don't have that knowledge.
I agree so much there. And I think, you know, in order for any consumer or user, or let's say even human being, really, for them to be able to trust your company and for what you do, then there needs to be ways in which you can build that trust and relationship with them. And I think this is why verification and trust is so important, because, for example, being able to verify that your models are safe, or that your AI agents are safe, or that they're identifiable, etc., etc. I think that is so crucial and so important, because then if a person says, oh, hey, I can see that this has a, let's say, verifiable ID, say this is a verified agent, so to speak, 1921 or whatever you want to call it, then the fact that you can see that is so crucial and important, because then that lends you to say, A, that's them being transparent, B, they're being verifiable and identified, and C, that the way it allows things to allows the user to trust so sort of what your business is doing and what, you know, you're doing as a company. So I think verification is important. I think trust is extremely important. And if you want trust from your consumers and your users, or anyone using even like your AI or whatever you're doing, I think that's fundamentally foundational important. And I think verification is important to that. So let's head over to you, Malvika. What responsibility do creators and businesses have for the lives of users? I will repeat the question to yourself as well, Malvika, because I'm sure you have a lot to say on this.
I do, yes. So I think everyone building XR has a serious duty of care toward users. And we know that unlike passive media, XR characters and platforms can deeply affect people's bodies and minds. We've already talked about that. And we also know now that ethicists are already making a strong moral case for prioritizing user safety. So what that means to me is, I think organizations can't be passive and wait for something to go wrong and then implement a fix retroactively. They need to red team. They need to anticipate harms, and they need to actively mitigate them. And so, for example, we need to embed safeguards throughout the product lifecycle, from design reviews to safety features. We need governance similar to physical products like XR, compliance, for example. And that includes obviously protecting personal data. It also includes enforcing age-appropriate experiences and preventing known issues like harassment, addiction, misinformation. We know that tools like moderation, transparent AI policies, and design for consent are real concrete steps toward this journey. And building XR is great. Yes, it's cutting edge technology. It can improve our lives in many ways, like Ellie and some others have said. But this is also diffusing the technology in a way. It's also about diffusing the technology in a way that upholds human dignity. We owe it to users to design experiences that I think enhance their lives, not exploit them.
100% agree. And I think, it's for businesses, it's foundational, like how you're saying, Malvika, from the start, right? Governance, policies, etc., guardrails. But then also adding the additional systems and layers on top of that, like, for example, AI education, like, for example, consent, etc. All of these multiple layers that added on top, including verification, I would include in that too. All these layers on top are so important because if you don't have all the layers and the foundations in place, then again, that's going to have a distrust. And then if you have a distrust, people are not going to want to use your platform, your business, whatever it is, and they won't trust your brand, and they'll be like, goodbye. So I completely agree with what you're saying, Malvika. We have to start with the foundation on the fundamentals first in order to allow businesses to be responsible for what happens with the users and their lives, so to speak. Is there anything you want to add just to quickly?
Yeah, I would say if we treat XR like any other field that is affecting public life, if we think about the regulations, whistleblowing, accountability, then I think that's a good first step toward fulfilling our responsibility to user lives.
Absolutely agree, Malvika. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. So let's go on to the next question. And Dr. Bradshaw, we're going to head over to you next, and then Eli. So Dr. Bradshaw, my question for you is, what does it mean to feel safe in an immersive world? So, that could be a multitude of things, right? Again, I think there's so many layers and areas within this. I mean, I could even go into trust and start talking about all different areas of trust, but that's not what we're here for. The question is, what does it mean to feel safe in the immersive world? Does it start with consent? Does it start with governance? How can we do that?
I think it starts with consent, and then it starts with governance. We have to be aware of what is being tracked. We have to be aware of what's being done within that immersive environment. A lot of times when if you going into Second Life, for example, they have some things that says M for mature, may contain nudity or this or that. They're letting you know ahead of time, hey, these are areas for this age appropriate, and they're putting the age, notifications in there. So I think that's a way to keep us safe within that environment. If we're given awareness of that environment, is it for older audiences or under 18? And if we're given awareness of everything, that way we given our consent to go in there. Because once we're doing that and say, oh, well, I'm over 18, so I can go in there. So we're getting that information to validate it. So I think if we're made aware of things like that, and we're given the consent and the governance at the same time, it can be modified and we can be kept safe within those platforms.
I agree. I do agree with that. It starts with the fundamentals. It does start with the foundation. And I think in order for us to create that safe world, especially when we're talking about XR, VR, and the immersive experience, and we're all going to be wearing meta glasses, by 2030. We're all going to be wearing, whatever other brands they're going to be out there, Ray-Bans, whatever. Maybe even Ray-Bans might make their own. When we're going to be wearing these glasses all the time, we're going to be so immersed in it because we're going to be wearing it all the time, every day, like your glasses, Dr. Bradshaw, that we're going to be walking around everywhere, not even thinking twice about wearing them and being immersed in them. So, it is a bit of a worrying experience of what is the new world going to look like? What is the new user interface going to look like how Christopher's saying? And, and what is that future going to be in order for people to feel safe? Because I do have quite an interesting study, and then I'll get your thoughts quickly on it, Dr. Bradshaw and Eli. So there was a study done by the Colorado State University in March 2026, where they used biometric VR headsets to measure basically the pupil dilations and also the eye tracking. And they found that poorly designed VR causes severe cognitive overload, but when used to render accurate 3D spatial environments, VR actually lightens the cognitive load compared to looking at 2D screens, like how we were saying earlier when we're talking about looking at screens. And so it says because of this, because of the brain, doesn't have to work as hard to construct the depth, it advises that 2D is better than 3D at this moment in time. So, Eli, Dr. Bradshaw, we're going to head over to both of you. Dr. Bradshaw, what is your quick thoughts on that? And then Eli, we'll head over to you after.
I think it's a good way to introduce someone to the environment, especially with since they're doing so many studies, and not only in 2D and 3D, but they've done that same study, something similar to that they have done with people with mental illness. They have used a 2D study, and they saw their response was better with that version of the metaverse environment. So I thought that was interesting, but they did it on a 2D level. So they had it timed and everything situated. So I think it really depends on what it's going to be used for and how they start to implement it in a way to where, it's timed and it's recorded, and just, really analyze to see if it's going to do a benefit or, something different.
Eli, what are your thoughts as well?
Yeah, and just to confirm, you're saying that the VR or metaverse environment was easier on the cognitive load when it was in 2D, correct?
It says it found that poorly designed VR causes severe cognitive overload, but when used to render accurate 3D spatial environments, VR actually lightens the cognitive load compared to looking at the 2D screens.
Okay, just want to make sure. So VR is lightening the cognitive load compared to looking at 2D screens. That makes sense to me. I've not talked about it very often, but I co-authored a paper in Japan with my co-author, Kento Oshima, another person, Clifford, in Canada, and then his head lecturer, Dr. Kim at the University of Shizuoka, where we focused on bioinformatics. We were talking about wearables and how even when it comes to getting that bioinformatic data to figure out the implications of technology or just general wellness on people, we focused on sleep. The numbers are not consistent for gathering that data. So we are still making waves within bioinformatics and figuring out the ways that we can even use technology to track the wellness of individuals. When it comes to the cognitive load of VR or metaverse on an individual, the paper that you said makes sense to me. We are essentially doing one part of the rendering. So if you're not familiar with computers, there's a GPU and CPU, and we're basically taking some of that off of the brain a little bit when we're doing these simulations. And then we're working on other sectors of the brain when it comes to actually feeling the simulation. So that's where that load shifts. And that's where we see those effects of anxiety, of the after effects of like, my brain didn't have to process as much, but my feelings definitely did. And that brings us back to the safety of XR experiences. And I think that we're kind of running in this circle of consent and safety and transparency. And I think something that everyone has brought up, which is understanding, and as I would phrase it, education is a key within all of this.
100%.
If you are constantly reminded, aka educated, that this is not a real experience, right? If you are informed that there is a way to exit this VR experience, be it you're walking on the street and you don't know who is wearing a meta pair of glasses, right? Or you're going through an experience and you don't know which one is the AI. If you yourself are educated on or informed as to what is part of and not part of that experience, that allows for you to take steps to feel safe. And I could talk more about this and what I've seen with older adults, which I often tutor in my community.
No, I completely agree, honestly, and I just thought the study was very interesting, it's always very interesting, reading out new studies or when new things come to light. So I thought that was very interesting. That's why I wanted to share with you guys. But I thank you for sharing your thoughts, Eli. And like I said, I completely agree with everything that you're saying. And so same to you, Dr. Bradshaw. So we've got 5 minutes left. What I want to do is do something a little bit different, just to finish the show off. Oh, not the show, the roundtable. To finish the roundtable off, what I want to do is basically just quickly, in maybe one or two words, what is something that you would like to see between AI and XR, or like any sort of immersive experiences? Is it that, for example, I want to see more people wearing glasses, XR glasses, for example, or I want to see, more consent happening on these websites? Whatever you're sort of feeling or thinking, I'd love to hear just kind of like your thoughts quickly from each of you on what you would like to see in the future. So Malvika, we'll head over to you. What's something that you would like to see between the AI and the XR sort of world coming together, so to speak?
I think what I would like to see is an acknowledgement and understanding that we are not just building cutting edge technology, we're shaping human experience at a much deeper level. We're shaping how people think, how they feel, how they relate to each other, and even how they understand themselves. And so what I would like to see more of is creators of this technology designing with human dignity and human agency in mind.
Camilla, over to you. What's something that you would like to see?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we didn't talk about that much was when you talk to people that are in these immersive worlds, you learn about people that have disabilities that cannot go outside to interact with people otherwise, or don't want to because of the mental load that it takes just to be judged outside. You learn about people from other cultures and other continents that now are able to connect with each other and talk to people from across the world. And so what I would like to see more of is access, and in a positive way, but access where we're breaking down those barriers and connecting with each other. So greater human connection.
Dr. Bradshaw, over to yourself. What would you something you'd like to see?
The same as Camilla, access, because you could reach someone even in remote places now that the technology is advanced so much. So I think access is really important, and understanding that we shouldn't, even though we have access, just do it in moderation. That's all.
And last but not least, Eli, what is something that you would like to see?
Agreeing across the board, access, education, and respect. I think bringing up the point that was brought up earlier about that cutting edge technology and respect within that. What are we cutting to make the bleeding edge bleed? And if you're going to profit or benefit from an empathy economy, you cannot react passively to the consequences of it. Let's connect, but let's really think about it.
And that is all we have time for, Eli, Dr. Bradshaw, Camilla, and Malvika. Thank you so much to each of our panelists. Thank you to also everyone for watching and tuning in over at GatherVerse.live and also in the GatherVerse community. I really appreciate your time for this roundtable discussion. Make sure you check out Camilla, Dr. Bradshaw, Eli, and Malvika. Go to their LinkedIns, follow them, connect with them, have a discussion with them. But I'm afraid our time is up. And also, thank you very much to the GatherVerse community. And this is it for this roundtable discussion for the human cost of immersion, trust, consent, and cognitive load. And up next, we have Lynn, who's going to be with a fireside chat with Karen to talk about the human contract of AI and XR, what we refuse to normalize. That is it from us. I'll gather as well. Over to you, GatherVerse team. Goodbye.
Thank you.